Very good evening to all our viewers. Thank you for joining us on this week's edition of The Agenda. My name is Toiwan Jabela, your host. Tonight on the show, we are joined by Tulimeke Munyika. She's a lawyer by profession, or a trained lawyer rather, as well as John Hafeni Kamati, who is a relationship and marriage counsellor. And tonight on the show, really, we are talking about the topical issue of weddings. How much should one spend on a wedding? We're talking about marriage, what are the virtues of a good marriage? And of course, the issue of divorce. We are told now that there are concerted efforts to make sure that those that want to divorce, the process is much, much easier and cost-effective as opposed to what has been happening in the past couple of years. Meme Tulimeke, thank you very much for making time.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Tate John, welcome back to the show.
Thank you most kindly,
yes.
Mr. Toivo.
Wonderful. So I'll start with Tuli, and this is really on the issue of recently there was one big wedding in the north, and I don't want to, it is not the subject today, but it caused a lot of talk in the country. People were talking about how much money must have been spent there. There were speculations of millions of dollars and whatnot. And there are those who do very humble marriages, weddings and stuff like that. How do we balance these two? Where do you, if you are getting married today as a Namibian man, and we are heading in a very, very interesting season now, July, August, September, how much must one spend on a marriage, on a wedding?
I don't think there should be any prescription on how much one can spend.
Yeah.
It really depends on how much money you have. What can you afford? It's an issue of affordability. So if you have more money and you actually want a lavish wedding, why not?
Yeah.
But it should not be where you have to go and get into debt for you to be able to have a lavish wedding. I think it's preference. It depends on what I like. If I like a lavish lifestyle, if I like to be out there and I can afford it, why not?
Yeah.
But even if I have a lot of money, if I am conservative, I can still be rich and have a low-key wedding. It's what a person likes and it's what they can afford.
White weddings are the ones that are costing this much. And there seems to be already, if you think of it, it looks like there's a template already in place, and we must all sort of use that template for white weddings. It must have this, it must have this. If one of these elements is missing, people judge me harshly. White marriage, is it a must?
Definitely not. I've looked up the whole history and the concept of a white wedding, more so a white dress really, for women. Very much a Western concept that has also then been adopted in the Christian or church wedding ceremonies. Definitely it is not a must. However, it has now become accepted or adopted as a tradition and also as a norm.
Yeah.
Because wedding is not so much about dress. Of course, there are rituals that goes with it, but I would say no, definitely not. Yeah.
So again, Tuli, can anyone really in Namibia marry by skipping that process of a white wedding? Is it possible?
Yes, it's possible. and I think maybe this is also what Pastor was speaking to. It's something that we have adopted and we've made it our normal. I can go to the magistrate's court. The wedding gets solemnized by a marriage officer. I'm married. I don't even need another ceremony. So it's possible to actually skip it, but I think there are some expectations of society on how it should be done. You get some phrases about how the marriage is yours, but the wedding is ours. It has to be a celebration. When people get together to celebrate, there has to be food. People need to dance. But if you want to skip it, you can skip it. Legally, you would still be married because you would have gone through the formal process that is required in law for it to be a marriage.
Maybe if I may just add on that as well, it's not just necessarily when you go to the magistrate court that you don't have to wear a white dress. I see people still do that. They go there and they still dress up. You can even do that in church. In fact, you can even get married in the office of the church, outside of the Sunday or formal Sunday service, and and even if you do it in church, and this is maybe something that people need to know, it's not obligatory. It's not a must that you must wear a white dress. Okay, I see that now people mix tradition, and maybe I should also specify and make a distinction in terms of cultural dynamics. I want to, when we talk about white weddings, I want to really be much more specific in this context, that I see this more in the community where I come from. In other cultures, of course, people also have these white weddings, and I'm speaking specifically now between black and white culture. Let's just be sociologically also relevant. I see that in our counterparts culturally, the white wedding thing is really very much downplayed. People don't necessarily make a big fuss about that. There is an aspect of fashion, expectations that are created, which I think are out of context.
Yeah. But that is exactly what, because Tuli mentioned about expectations and how you then get sort of pressured by that natural expectation that you ought to do things in a particular way. It surely cannot continue, because if you look at the black culture's wedding in our country, our black communities, the amount of spending that goes into that, and Memetuli spoke about making sure that one doesn't get into debts.
Yeah.
But if a wedding is costing you 150,000, 200,000, and those are really conservative figures, it goes really, really much higher than that. Generally, no one has that kind of money. Not our young people who are getting married. You are young, you are 29, where would you get 300,000 cash to go with a wedding? I mean, your thoughts?
But you see, it's not necessarily just the couple that gets to take out of their purses to fund this wedding. It's the whole family, it's friends. You know that this clan has to give a certain amount, the other one needs to give a certain amount, because we've adopted it as our normal. So it's not, yes, you still have to spend quite a lot of money, but the expectation is always that family must also put money on the table. Is it fair? I don't think so. I don't think it should be like that. I think a wedding should be what you can afford. But the problem sometimes could be, this is what I can afford. We are going to go to church, we'll go to the office, small do, get married, come back home. Extended family says no. Then in that case, they should pay because it's really an expectation. It has to be a celebration. People need to come, they need to eat. It might not be what I want, but it's what the people around me want. So they should chip in.
They should chip in.
Yeah. I think as a marriage counselor, I've become much more, I would say it has been very sobering to see, first of all, a lot of young people indeed get married and they start off their life on debt. In fact, I was shocked. You're talking of 100,000. I was just making a comment before we started, and I said, I remember my wedding ring was 178 rand. That was now 31 years ago, but I still had a very, very small wedding then. 600,000. And I have found that, I mean, 600, not mine, but this is what I have seen last year. Young couple, and within 9 months, they were standing on divorce, and that's how they came to me. Part of this problem I think is also exacerbated by the fact that people are not prepared in terms of what marriage is, and also just the principles that make marriage successful, which include finances, planning ahead of time. And we need to also make a distinction. I hear my learned colleague is saying that it's almost like it's a must that the family must be involved. We need to re-educate our community. Many a times, family gets involved in the celebration, but they are not part of the marriage institution afterwards. There's a lot of pressure. You need to have this, you need to have a tent, you need to have all this. But when you have problems, it's basically you alone. My take is we need to re-educate in as much as we value the tradition, because I even question now the tradition that we have established around weddings. And I want to also be, I studied sociology, and I think sometimes we should not shy away from the realities. I think within the Black community, I think one can even break the wedding culture according to the various ethnic groups.
Yes.
In the North in particular, where my roots are, I think it's just gone way crazy, out of hand in terms of that. Other cultures, for example, over Hereros, even people from the eastern part, is it Katima? They also do traditional weddings, but there's not so much pressure like I see up in the northern part of our country. So my take is we need to actually reevaluate and say that is this really necessary, the way that we do these things.
Yeah. Betuli, when I was getting married 2 years ago, as a matter of fact, prior to getting married, I was maybe in a joke type of way to my friends to say, look, I am going to change how weddings are going to be done going forward within the Ovambo community, because I was telling myself, I'm not going to subscribe to the template. I'm going to do things my way and really, really easily. And I thought I might have some sort of influence on the community, and therefore I will set an example going forward. Was I not lying to myself? It was crazy. I ended up still spending a lot of money that I don't have, but I'm just saying to you then that this cannot carry on. It's not sustainable. What are we going to do?
Well, I think it needs to start at the individual level. The person that is getting married deciding how they want the wedding to be. And I think most of the time, really, like Pastor was saying, we concentrate on the wedding. No one is actually thinking about the marriage. What happens after that when you get into that? Everybody's gone, you sit and the bills are on the table and you're wondering, what are we going to do? So I should be able to decide, I'm the one getting married, this is how I want it done. Convince the people that need to be convinced, those uncles that matter during events like that, to say, this is how I'm going to do it because this is my budget. And you stick to it. But I've seen that even when we've had a few events at home, we decide it's going to be this number and this is the budget. People are going to turn up anyways. Now you don't want to have people in the house who've come to celebrate and they have nothing to eat. But I think it's really picking what are the absolute necessities that need to be there and can we afford it. And really, if you don't want a big do, it should be possible not to have a big do. But I think it has become such that even if you don't want a big event, you want 20 people, you've budgeted for it, these other cousins are going to come and chip in and say, you can't have 20 people, what about this one and the other one, here is the money. I think it's really a balance, but nobody should be pressured into getting into debt just to feed people. And maybe some of the things are also not necessary. You want to hire a whole lot of things. You need a helicopter for you to get to a place. Well, if you own it, no problem, and it's not going to cause any hardship on your pocket. But if you're going to borrow money from the bank in order for you to charter a plane, then there is a problem. But I think it's us really being self-aware and making decisions that we know are best for us.
Well said. But from where I am, you know, counseling people, doing premarital counseling, and also I had my son that got married 2 years ago. And what you say, it's amazing how we even had the same situation in our family, because people take ownership of that, you know, aunties, uncles, and the siblings, you know, in terms of the kind of wedding they want. And I remember even us, we had those battles, you know. I was of the opinion, let them do how they want it, and they wanted a small wedding. And of course there are two families involved, you know, and there was a whole lot of push and pull. They were looking at 10, 20 people, and eventually there was a whole list of, I think, about over 100, 200 people, and that needed to be negotiated. Thanks to COVID, they ended up marrying when there was only 10 people allowed. I said, that's awesome. But that is really to highlight the reality of our culture, which makes this thing, which take it so much out of the control of those that are getting married. And I think we need to realize that. Now, when you say that it comes at the individual level, ideally it should. But I also find that there is a lot of ignorance, even from those that are getting married. The unfortunate thing is, I think the African thing is that we have adopted so many values or so many cultural habits that we can't even explain anymore.
But that is exactly what I wanted to say to you, Tata John, that that culture, black culture, if I can call it that way, is probably one of the main factors why things are the way they are, because we come from communities where you are a product and a property of that community. If I go to Okalong, where I come from, and simply say to people, we have 200 people, invited guests, strictly invited guests, they are going to chase me out of that village because it is simply not possible. 80%, 90% of the people that are at your wedding are people that are not invited, and you simply cannot chase them away. Those are the people who you played football with in the village, and you went to university, they did not maybe make it and become just ordinary members of the community, but you don't now say, I'm now this class, you are no longer welcome in my domain. It becomes part of it. There are people who come to your wedding actually asking for direction to your house. They've never been there before. They just heard there's a John getting married there, and because culturally they ought to share everything with us, we are going to eat, we are going to drink. That element becomes very difficult to do away with, isn't it?
I agree to a certain extent. The only certainty in life is change. Now, I think with our communities with our community is the fact that if you look at the historical evolvement of weddings, where we come from, the pressure was never on the couple. When we talk that we are community, from the original tradition that we've had was that people truly provided. Everybody will come, but you will not have, in fact, people never had pressure because everything will be provided for. But things have changed now, you know, and now you find that there are now these new elements that have come in. People are mixing now the modern way. A lot of time people go to the village and they have a wedding that looks like Prince Charles and Diana. You know, and I'm always fascinated that the guy's got the white jacket on now, tuxedo, and the whole village is full of dust. I keep saying that this is not practical. But I think we need to distinguish that, and this is a reality that I think we must come to terms with and an understanding. How do we mix our tradition, the way we do things in the African context? For example, where the whole community is part of it, with now the modern way that we have also adopted. That is a reality that we are confronted with, that puts a lot of pressure financially, especially on the couples that are getting married. If the society, community is able to also contribute, now that culture, we must understand, is gone.
It's gone.
And that's why, I think that teaching, you asked an earlier question when she said it must start at an individual level. I think everybody that is involved institutionally, a lot of us, we get married in church. We need to start to teach it in church, in terms of new values and norms that must be adopted, that are very practical and realistic.
Yeah. Maybe Munyika, what you were saying earlier about, you see, you have a lot of people in the wedding. A lot of people really came to eat. And food, in fairness, is not the most expensive expense of modern weddings. If you go there, buy bags of potatoes, make salad and whatnot, rice, it's not the most expensive. It's really things that I would call unnecessary that are the most expensive. You spoke about an example of a helicopter, the tent, paying 70,000, 80,000 for just 5 hours of having that structure at your house. And then just these minor things, DJs, what, of course, I mean, people got to dance, I got that part. But if we are going to trim it down, I think food will remain. And this is, for me, what brings people around. How do we then cascade and say, look, guys, let's go through the list. Is this necessary? If I have a nice tree in my Mahangu field where we can just congregate under with nice dressed seats, why must we have a tent and stuff like that? Do you think there are boxes that we can tick off and say this is unnecessary?
Not necessarily. I don't know how it is for men. As young girls, as women, we grow up with a picture of how you want that day to be. It must be fairy tale. You have to be dressed in a particular way. Your hair must look a particular way. You need to be the center at that wedding. So for women, there are certain things that we cannot remove. But then again, that is really at the individual level. I don't know if that's the correct way to actually phrase it. I mean, I have a sister who would nicely go in jeans and get married, then it's not a problem. And then I would not go and get married in jeans, hello. So it's really, what do you prefer as an individual? What do you like? If you can afford it, I don't think it should be a problem. But there are certain things, of course, that need to be cut out. But it will also still be, according to me, it's not necessary. But according to you, it's necessary. So it will be very difficult to have sort of a checklist of what should happen in a community. It's what I want. Then there are certain people who will impose, and even if I don't like it because of the type of relationship we have or the level of respect, I mean, you'll see buses, cars coming of people you've never heard of because your father has said they must come. Then they need a specific place in the house to sit. Then they only drink certain things. The food, I agree, is not the most expensive. Alcohol is expensive.
Yes.
Where would you go to a wedding today and not find alcohol in excess? It's
a good point.
There are certain things we can cut out. I mean, I remember at a wedding, a decision was taken, we're only going to pay for food. And people said, we've never seen a wedding without alcohol. The couple said, we are not paying for alcohol. There was alcohol in abundance. Who bought it? The people around the couple, not themselves. So it's really the priorities. You can set priorities for yourself as a couple, but you might not really have control over what the people around you decide to do.
Wonderful. We go for a break and return for the next part of the show. continue our conversation here. Now, Tuli, when you said before the break, when you said that, you know, and it's true what you said, 100%, that women would say, oh, this is my only time that I'm getting married, and I need it to be very, very special, as much as possible. Isn't that also part of the problem, that we have this pressure piled on people? Your friends will come around, they need to see you want to be the princess, the center of attention. Isn't that also very problematic in that you are now piling expectations on yourself?
Well, I don't think the girl's dream thing is the biggest contributor to the bill. I mean, because you're talking the dress, the shoes, makeup, hair. Not too expensive, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't think the motivation is to impress. Okay, maybe, no, let me withdraw that. I think for some people, maybe that would be the motivation. I think there's an inner thing of how I feel myself, not necessarily that I get to compete with Maria, that my wedding should be better than hers, but that mine must just be special for me. And if it's affordable, why not?
If it's affordable.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, I don't think you need a dress that costs, I don't know, 100,000, because you're not going to wear it again. But maybe the idea is right, when you're done, you sell it back to somebody else.
Yeah.
It can still be trimmed down in order not to exceed what you can afford.
Yeah.
But just don't go dressed in shorts, Toivo.
Okay, I think we've done justice to the subject of the cost of wedding. That John, I want to engage you on as a marriage counselor, when people come to you and say, we intend to enter this institution called marriage, what seems to be the motivation? Is it, oh, we are not going to split the bills? Is it because he or she is attractive and sexually, and therefore I'm granted that kind of access for the remainder of my life? Or is it traditional? Oh, I'm 35 now, I ought to get married because everybody at my age ought to be married. What is that seem to be what seems to be the reason?
I think it varies because we are so unique and diverse.
Yeah.
All the factors that you've mentioned, they seem to contribute.
Yeah.
I've got a couple that I've been counseling. They want to get married, but they seem to just not agree on anything. There's so much fire between them, and yet they are committed to get married. You know. So my role is therefore to bring them to understand the things that truly matter and to mature in these areas where they have misunderstanding. Some people might say, and I see this mostly with ladies, that when they reach here by 30, mid-30s, there is a lot of, I think the clock is ticking, they want to have babies, and you know, they are much more open to get married. And I find that in that space, there's also a whole lot of room for not compromise, but for it's a bit for compromise. They might choose something that for the wrong reasons. You mentioned sex. We are wired that way. There's a scripture in the Bible where Paul says that if you are burning, get married. It's a good reason, but it's not the only reason because it's a beautiful thing. Some people get married really for religious reasons because they feel that, you know, they believe that I need to get married before I even get children, or I don't want to have sex out of wedlock, and then some people actually also get married because they are of cultural pressure. You know, parents are pushing them that you are getting old. But I think in principle, at the bottom of it, people want to get married because they love one another and they feel that this is the kind of person they want to spend their life with. So to answer your question, I think the motivations can be very varied based on the uniquenesses of people. But ultimately, we are relational beings. And marriage is the ultimate expression of that relationship between men and women.
Metuli, your take on the motivations for what should motivate people to get married?
And like Pastor has just said, it's actually different reasons, and it also sort of differs from person to person based on the environment that has conditioned you. Those who've grown up in a Christian setting would want to get married because it's the right thing to do. Pastor was talking about, yes, I cannot have sex outside wedlock. I can only have children within wedlock. But I think this is where the church actually needs to come in, because in as much as many of us are saying, I need to get married because I can't have children outside the marriage, you're still fornicating before you actually get into the marriage. So what really drives you as a person? What is your value system? What is your belief system? Yes, of course, I think one of the issues is children. I want to have children, but I really don't want to raise the child alone. You want to raise this child in a family. There has to be a mother and there has to be a father. But I think it really needs to go back to, what do I regard to be most important? I don't know, maybe there are people who get married just for sex, just sexual appeal. This girl, this guy looks sexually attractive. I don't know if that will sustain a marriage.
Definitely
but the
not.
reasons vary. I think the important thing is to pick out which ones matter the most to you. To get married also, sometimes it's because of pressure. Every time you go home, you see there in the neighbor's house, this one got married and this one, what are you waiting for? Then we get pushed into relationships, into long-term, lifetime commitments to marry somebody just because everybody else has gotten married. Then the things that will happen in that marriage, my parents will not even take responsibility for it. They just pushed me into it and left me there. It should be the reasons that I myself regard to be important to be getting married.
Is it a follow-up? Are women under more pressure to get married? Tate Kamati spoke about age, that once you reach, I mean, for men, they can go on and on.
I know.
and for some reason, they can still, find a younger person. For women, unfortunately, that privilege doesn't exist to say, okay, I'm 38 now, but this 27-year-old guy, I mean, you might be in the West. Here, it's almost impossible. So you end up either getting married to a very, very old man or whatever. People start seeing you as an old woman, and even if you speak to your parents that you want to marry this person, and they hear that she's a particular age, then they say, but I mean, can't you find someone a bit younger? Why? They become very, very suspicious. So if she's this old and she's not yet married, what are the problems? Is it more pressure on women?
I would like to think so, but I don't understand why it's like that. I think the parents must tell us why they put pressure more on the girl child than the boy child. But it's a societal thing. Let's look at the scenario of, if you have a woman who's sleeping around, just imagine what society will say about her. And you have a man sleeping around, doing exactly the same. Society will look at them differently. So if you care about your name and your character, then you'd want to get married so that you don't have to be sleeping around. Is it right to put pressure on anybody to get married? I don't think so. Because obviously we get to see today that the rate of divorce is extremely high. Why is that maybe happening? I think the counseling, and we must not only start when we're about to get married that we get counseled. When we are at home as parents, what conversations are we having with our children? What conversations are we having with those close to us about marriage and why it's important? Why is it that we cannot accept that Tuli has just decided she just doesn't want to get married? And that's true for women. I decide now I just don't want to get married. I reach 40, the things that will be said about me and the things that will be said about you would not be the same. So the pressure is there. Why is it there? I don't know. But even if the pressure is there, if as an individual I have decided this is what is good for me, this is what I want to do, the pressure shouldn't actually get to me.
Dr. Kamati, you want to say something on that?
Yes, I think I'm very much, I guess maybe because of the age where I am, I think there's also an aspect that we should not overlook. And I was saying that one thing that is sure is really change. There has been a whole lot of change in our cultural orientation, if I may use that term. I'm even now seeing that the younger generation, their values are completely different. In fact, most of these pressures we are talking about, the younger generations, if I'm talking about the born frees, their value system is different, you know, and they are not so much about, you know, I see young people now, they would already marry out, you know, have a prenuptial agreement. They might not take, you know, some of these things are much more public because of social media, but there's also a change, I think, in that respect. One thing that I've observed that also in terms of pressure is the pressure from parents, because they want grandchildren. And they keep putting pressure. When are you getting married? You know, we can't wait. We are getting old. We want grandchildren. That is also another aspect. But just, I said this earlier. Miles Monroe said, if you do not know the purpose of a thing, abuse is inevitable. If people understand what is marriage, what does marriage constitute of, what are the principles that make marriage successful or work, it becomes easier to tick off some of these things that they are not necessary. Obviously, at the end of the day, you still have a choice if you want to have a lavish wedding, which I agree with you. But I think once you know a whole lot more, you start to put value on the things that matter. Premarital counseling is important.
Yeah, wonderful. And speaking of counseling, I mean, is it working? We are told, it's not that we are told, as a matter of fact, the fact is that as matters stand, divorce is very, very expensive in Namibia right now, because you don't even have an option of divorcing without going through the legal route, paying lawyers and stuff like that, the Tulis. So, but even with that costly exercise, the costly nature of it, divorce is still very, very high. And now the country has adopted, is now busy adopting an easier way to divorce, more cheaply and faster and all that. Meaning that we are going to see even more divorces, because I suspect some people are just not divorcing because of the costs that are involved. I mean, so why are people divorcing? What is this recurring issue that seems to be coming up now and again as the key reason why people are divorcing?
I think the reasons are also many. But ultimately, you get to a point where in law would say the marriage has broken down irretrievably. But that there are many things that build up to a marriage breaking down to an extent that it cannot be fixed. Money issues. And I think money is one of the biggest. You went into marriage having borrowed I don't know how much money. Now you have to pay back. You have to go and rent. You have not actually made adequate provision to start off your marriage. Infidelity. You get in, you tell each other very sweet things on the wedding day. And then after that, there's already a side chick within a month. So in fact, before you get into marriage, there are already other people on the sides. I think people are getting to a stage where whatever it is that is happening in that marriage, I just cannot take it anymore. I would rather be alive alone, because we have also seen how numbers have gone up quite a lot. Killing one another just because you don't understand one another. I think people are getting to a point where they have to make a decision. And I really sincerely believe when you reach that point, you have exhausted everything. I don't think anybody would just wake up without having tried and you decide you want to divorce, but you've tried everything and it's just not working. It could be many reasons. For Christians, I cannot have premarital sex. You only get sexually active within the marriage. He wants children. You cannot have children. For some reason, it's always the woman's fault. I don't know. Men maybe think they're always just fertile. But because you believe you must have children and this person can't have children, you want out of the marriage. You're not even exploring other options. Why can you not adopt? But I think when you reach a point of divorce also, and this is why before getting into the marriage, you need to identify what are those things that are important. Do you stand on the same principles concerning those things you have identified to be important? Because I think many times we are not in agreement on many things. We get into the marriage, we expect miracles to happen. Then you go and you receive at every prayer meeting, but it's still not working. But it's because we're not having honest conversations before we get married. I've heard of couples where you get married and you actually believe that this person is X. You get into the marriage and this person is not who you were actually told they are. The village that they told you is not the one they come from. You just got married in Windhoek. You find out the person has another things that you didn't know, but for you they're important. And if the person had opened up beforehand, you would not have gotten into this marriage. Anyways, I think the factors are a lot, but it just reaches a point where you and I, it's just not working. I would rather leave.
The factors that you encounter a lot of times that they come at
they are very varied again. Again, I want to emphasize ignorance. And when I say ignorance, it's just lack of knowledge of what this entails. Secondly, it's also unpreparedness. People are not really prepared because, again, they do not know. Things like when we talk about infidelity, when we talk about money issues, those are things you could prepare for. Sometimes when I say prepare, maybe not so much infidelity, but you might find that it's only that comes out as an escape route for someone. That could not be the original source of the marriage problem. It could be that you have financial problems, your communication is messed up, and then as a result, you might actually go and find comfort outside, although that was not the case. Again, those things, personality differences, blended family issues where you come in the marriage with children from outside. Surprisingly, in-laws that get into the equation. Sicknesses, some people cannot even handle. You find out this person actually has got some, maybe the person is bipolar, or the person has got a certain physical or physiological sickness or defect, and people then drift apart from one another. The essence of love, everybody can love anyone, really. And many people say that I have fallen out of love. And even there's the sense of we have reached the point of irretrievable, or we don't understand one another. All these things can be mended. We can change our heart. We can be given skills of how to bring restoration. And I have found that those families or marriages that find through restoration and reconciliation, they even enjoy much more the benefits of matrimonial union. At the end of the day, I think the bottom line of it, for me, what I have seen, is really lack of skill how to do conflict resolution, or rather just managing conflicts. Some conflicts can be managed. People don't have skills of conflict resolution, closure, all these kind of things.
Actually, let's now in closure talk about sham marriages. What are those?
Well, our law requires marriages to be in good faith. So when we talk about sham marriages, we're talking about a marriage that was entered into not in good faith.
Now, I mean, what are the examples, like financially, for example, and stuff?
Yeah, I think the most common example would be where you have a non-Namibian marry a Namibian just for the purpose of getting residence in the country, to obtain domicile, for them to get citizenship. And we're seeing this. Even last week, I think there was something in the print media where I would get married to somebody and nobody even knows that I'm, that I'm married. I mean, even the law requires marriage to be a public affair. Yeah. But we are seeing these marriages where I just go sort of secretly. We just go and we sign and I keep quiet. Nobody knows that I'm married, and this guy gets to stay in Namibia because he has a marriage certificate. But we don't even live together. There's actually no marriage. We've just entered into an arrangement. We've done it in accordance with what the law provides, but in actual fact, we are not married.
I see a lot of that, especially that line of saying that, you know, foreigners come wanting to obtain citizenship or residency, and they then link up with sometimes even very, very young women. And I don't know, sometimes I think with time, these women start developing, as much as it was really strictly a business arrangement, they start developing some sort of attachment. They come to us, into the newspapers, and say, yeah, my husband, you know, he doesn't even look at me, he doesn't call me, we don't even live together. But originally it was exactly supposed to be that way.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that also happens when people come and complain. What I have seen where I work now is now I am in a genuine relationship. This guy wants to marry me. I cannot marry because I'm already married. It's bigamy. It's a criminal offense in our law to be married more than once at civil law. So sometimes they come to you, please, ma'am, can you just delete the other marriage? Unfortunately, a marriage cannot be deleted like that. Yeah. You have to go to the High Court. You need to go through that expensive process of divorce. Yeah. But now, imagine my parents don't actually know I'm married. Nobody in my family knows I'm married. And then this guy turns up at my family to do introductions. They need a wedding date. But then you will go, when you need to do the necessary checks to get married, you are told you cannot get married, you must first divorce. This guy probably only paid you for the first year, then he disappeared, then you also don't care about him. He's actually gone. But it affects your life, it affects your status. You will have to get divorced. Where will you find him? He has gone back to his country.
What happens in that case if a guy runs back to Asia or wherever he came from?
You remain married.
He cannot sign on that.
Anything called dissension or something.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to, you still have, unfortunately, the only way to get out of a marriage is through divorce or death of one of the spouses. That's the only way a marriage would be dissolved. You can still go to court. You still need a lawyer to start with, so your pocket must not be empty. You need a lawyer. Court papers will still be drafted, and the person can be served wherever they are. Now imagine if in Namibia you did not know where he was. How will you know in the country where he is? Then you need to actually spend more money to try and trace him there.
Looking for the guy in Beijing.
Exactly. We must just make the right decisions at the very beginning, because when you get into it with the promise of getting $300 per month, which is and then you marry in community of property, and then he has debts, he's running businesses that are in debts of millions. These debts also become yours, because legally you have actually concluded a valid marriage.
It's very scary. Please go ahead.
I need to maybe just in defense of men, or maybe just to put balance to it. I think it's not necessarily just one way that it's men that would marry, for crooked reasons. You also find women that might get into marriage because they think it's a lucrative financial arrangement.
True.
When I'm saying that, without having had that agreement before, you get involved with a guy because you think he's gonna take good care of you, and yet you don't actually really love him. There is also that component that one experiences. Again, for me, it comes back to not understanding what marriage really is all about.
But you see, the interesting thing, Pastor, is people don't necessarily always get married because they love one another.
I agree.
There would be other reasons why you get married, but there is no love.
There's no love.
I actually beg to differ on the concept of love, because love is not an emotion. Love is work, and love is something that is a commitment. You find people that have arranged marriages, which still happens a lot here in our country, especially among the, if I may use, my wife is Herero, even among the Herero communities, somebody dies in the family, at the funeral, that's where they give people, you are handed over in marriage. And marriages stand. Love is really, we all have the capacity and the ability to love. And I think that is where the faith and spirituality come in as well, and so on.
Yeah.
But we need to be honest, we need to be transparent, and we need to also know what we truly want. Marriage is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's
indeed.
But let me just, on the issue of the sham marriages, the blame is also not only on the foreigner who's married a Namibian. The Namibian is also equally wrong, because they are getting into it really transactionally to get money out of it. So the blame is on all of them. What we don't realize is your benefit is $300 per month, but the other person is gaining much more. You don't actually know him. What if he comes and he starts bombing all over the place? You're actually getting into a union, you're opening the door for this person to come, and you place all of us in a predicament. But the blame goes to both.
Metuli, thank you very much for a very wonderful conversation.
It was good to be here.
Yes, Dr. Kamati, always a pleasure.
Likewise, thank you most kindly.
Wonderful. Yeah. That is tonight's show. Thank you for watching, and good night.
Careers Bistro focuses on the movers and shakers in the corporate world. It takes the content of the Careers Hub that is inserted every Friday in 3 NMH dailies, Republikane, Namibian Sun, and Algemeine Zeitung, to viewers on social media. This show is broadcasted on NTV, 1up2.com, and cross-shared on the following Facebook platforms: Careers Hub, the Republikane, Algemeine Zeitung, Namibian Sun, and Namibia Media Holdings. Careers Bistro focuses on car interviews, career motivational videos, the ups and downs of different careers, keeping in touch with business, and more. For career-related content or advertising queries, please contact zone@synergy.com.na.
The Evening Review is a daily interview-based talk show that dissects and expounds on current affairs as they occur in Namibia. The show aims at reaching Namibians of all age groups who seek better understanding of the state of current affairs in the country. This show is broadcasted on NTV, 1up2.com, and cross-shared on the following Facebook platforms: Namibian Sun and Namibia Media Holdings. The Evening Review focuses on interviews, latest news, and up-to-the-minute current events. Contact evening@synergy.com.na. Evening Review, unpacking today's pertinent issues.